So what we have is a secret society which, over the last 150 years, has accumulated about 2,500 members.
President Trump repeatedly distanced himself from this on the campaign trail last year, despite many of its contributors working on his election team. He's since appointed some of its authors to lead some of the same federal departments and agencies that they devoted long chapters to for the project.
He says he'll do terminate the Constitution of the United States.
That's right.
Let me remind folks, you know what's in the Constitution of the United States? The Fourth Amendment, which protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. The Fifth Amendment. This
is the title of the book, 2025, Scenarios of U.S. and Global Society Reshape. There's that re again.
Welcome to the sacrificed.
Okay, as you know, we love to read on this show. We have a banned book club. Our staff loves a good summer read in particular, except last summer we spent all our time reading this, Project 2025. 2 volumes here I've got because that's how many pages it is. It's more than 900 pages. It's a conservative roadmap for a Republican presidency to reshape the entire federal government. President Trump repeatedly distanced himself from this on the campaign trail last year, despite many of its contributors working on his election team. He's since appointed some of its authors to lead some of the same federal departments and agencies that they devoted long chapters to for the Project 2025 agenda. Russell Vought, who orchestrated the whole project, but also wrote the section on the Office of Management and Budget, now runs the Office of Management and Budget. Brendan Carr, who wrote the chapter on the Federal Communications Commission, now runs the Federal Communications Commission. 8 months into Trump's second presidency, the authors of Project 2025, they gotta feel like their time was worth it, because a significant amount of the policy proposals in this thing have already been implemented, with more in progress. President Trump's evisceration of the federal workforce, his focus on establishing a federal government loyal to him, ripped out of the first chapter. His dismantling of the Department of Education and of USAID resemble the plans laid out in this book. The firing of the FBI director in the middle of his 10-year term and the elimination of any sort of independence between the FBI and the White House are written into this book. Trump's war on climate research, it's taken straight from these pages. The April firing of nearly 400 scientists who author the National Climate Assessment, which tells us where we are as a country in the fight against climate change. Page 59. The White House has re-embraced coal as a valuable energy source while pushing solar and wind energy to the side. Page 377. Many of the administration's attacks on abortion rights and contraception access are sourced all the way through this book. In March, the Trump administration pardoned 23 people who were violating the FACE Act, which is meant to maintain open access to abortion clinic entrances and protect doctors and patients from harassment and violence. The Department of Justice was also instructed to largely stop enforcing the law, signaling that will not defend abortion access, even in states where abortion is legal. Page 558. In January, Trump signed an order enforcing the so-called Mexico City policy, a Reagan-era rule that bars foreign aid going to any organization that even discusses abortion as a healthcare option. Page 260. July's reconciliation bill in Congress was almost like a combo deal for Project 2025's architect. It includes provisions to eliminate subsidies and tax credits for renewable energy, which can be found on page 306, to impose stricter work requirements for SNAP food assistance from page 299, to increase the capacity of ICE detention facilities by 100,000 beds from page 143, to roll back student loan forgiveness and eliminate income-backed repayment options from page 331. All of this adds up to a wildly successful first 8 months for the conservative interest groups and think tanks that joined up to write Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation, which led the project, has wielded influence in Washington for decades, but never as much as it does right now at this moment. And by the way, we're not done. Next month, Heritage is releasing a judicial counter-project to Project 2025. It's called The Heritage Guide to the Constitution, which intends to reshape policies and priorities inside the judicial branch as much as it's already done within the executive branch. What could possibly go wrong?
I'm telling you this is what's going to happen because I've talked to them face to face and they don't even hide the fact.
How powerful are they? Well, they are so powerful that they have taken over control of the United States. Neither the president nor the Congress is in control of the United States. They pick the presidents. If they don't like them, they get rid of them.
That person will wear the throne of the world. Behind that person will be a council of what they call wise men who will really be the rulers. This poor guy is just going to be the fool they stick out there to take the brunt of the public wrath whenever it's necessary. Then you can knock him off if you want to. They should put somebody else up there.
It's taken me 25 years to come to the conclusions that I have come to. And I want to tell you that one of the biggest things I discovered in my work was the existence of a supranational committee composed of 300 men, called the Committee of 300, also known in intelligence circles as the Olympians. This is the committee that runs the world. Now, in my book, The Committee of 300, I name every one of them. This is not a book that talks about they. It gives you specifics. Who and what is the Committee of 300? Well, I've dealt with that. I've told you this is a supranational body that knows no boundaries, respects the laws of no countries. The first time that they were publicly announced was by a German socialist by the name of Walter Rathenau. Now, I'll give you some background of Walter Rathenau. He was the financial advisor to the Kaiser of Germany, and he was also the financial advisor to the Rothschilds, the French family Rothschild. So he must have known what he's talking about. He made an astonishing statement in 1934. He said, there is a committee of 300 men that rule the world. They are known only to each other, and nothing happens without their consent.
And nothing happens without their consent.
I came across this quite by accident when I was serving in Africa, in Angola, and I was given a series of documents which were only supposed to be handed in to top-level people. They were what we call above the top level of classification of intelligence documents, and there I discovered that whilst I thought I was in Africa fighting against the invasion of the communists, I was in fact fighting to introduce socialist regimes in the black African countries, and that I was actually working for a committee called the Committee of 300, also known in intelligence circles as the Olympians. In 1986, I wrote a work called Mind Control, Metaphysics, Extremely Low Frequency Radiation and Weather Modifications. And in that work, July the 8th, 1986, I said that the top-level intelligence organization in the United States was the National Reconnaissance Office, far bigger than the CIA and any of the other intelligence agencies. And by the way, we have about 10 different ones in the United States. I even had the audacity to give the address of this organization. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Sam Donaldson, the gentleman who wears that beautiful toupee so effectively, he came on with the program in prime time, and he said, this is one of the biggest scoops that ABC has ever had. And he told about the National Reconnaissance Organization. The exact same thing that I published 8 years earlier. I tell you this to set the stage so that you'll understand I do have some experience and that I know that of which I speak. And I came across the families in Italy who were called the Fondi, meaning the people who had all the money. They were all members of the Committee of 300, the Lucatis, the Recanati, the Volpi du Miseratis. These people are so wealthy that they would make David Rockefeller look like a piker. That is how rich they are. And this is the committee that runs the world. Now, in my book, The Committee of 300, I name every one of them. This is not a book that talks about they. It gives you specifics.
And this is where it gets uncomfortable.
When former head of state Mikhail Gorbachev visited the United States a few years ago, flanked by George Bush and Quayle, he opened his Gorbachev Foundation in the United States. And he let slip, he said, this is being done with approval of the Committee of 300. CNN cameras were on him. They immediately switched. Now, I wrote to CNN and I said, could I have a transcript of this program, which they said was available. I never got a reply. I followed it up with letter after letter, but nothing ever came of it. The point I'm trying to make, ladies and gentlemen, is that the federal government, the secret upper-level parallel government that runs the United States, does not want you to know that you have an upper-level parallel government that calls the shots, that dictates what is going to happen to your life and mine. I revealed the existence of an organization called the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which is located at Chatham House in 10 St. James Square in London. I also revealed the existence of the Club of Rome, the Cini Foundation, the Mont Pelerin Society, the Order of St. John, which is known but not known. And I listed all of these secret societies that run the world as executive arms of the Committee of 300. So it controls the world through all of these. The Royal Institute for International Affairs is the executive arm of this committee, which gives instructions to the United States government to this very day. The chain of command is as follows. Every Secretary of State that has been appointed since 1919 is appointed by the Royal Institute for International Affairs. That may come as a shock for you. You think you vote and you put a conservative in the White House, and then he appoints supposedly or allegedly conservative people to carry out the policies that you wanted him to implement. Surprise, surprise. I ask you to find me a conservative Secretary of State since 1919. And if you search diligently and apply the correct rules, you will come out blank. Every one of the Secretaries of State was chosen in London by the Secretary of State, as was Wilson, President Wilson, as was Roosevelt, as was James Earl Carter. He was specially chosen because he'd had 3 mental breakdowns, and they felt he would be a good guy to manipulate. Oh, I'm talking facts. This Committee of 300 told a man called Aurelio Pecchi to form this Club of Rome with the main object of bringing down the industries and the agricultural development of the United States. He immediately wrote a paper in which he said there are too many people on the earth, and that the United States, with its industrial development, its agricultural development, is responsible for this curse of overpopulation. So the Club of Rome was instituted and organized to start an attack on the world's population using the United States as the whipping boy. And they came up with a paper called the Zero Growth Post-Industrial Plan for Industry and Agriculture for the United States of America.
Now listen closely to what he claims next.
The middle class in the United States of America had to be destroyed because in the coming push to a world order, the middle class would be the stumbling block, because history had shown that the peasant class in ancient days, when they had revolted, were just easily crushed. There was no resistance. But now had grown a new super class of people in the United States called the middle class, who had long-term employment, who had job security, who were well paid, who could afford to buy the products that were made by the United States and didn't need to buy products from China or anywhere else. And the Club of Rome post-industrial zero-growth paper said this has got to stop. We have to bring down the middle class of the United States. And the way that we will do this, the way that we will accomplish this task, is by crushing their industries. The Club of Rome celebrated its anniversary, and Alexander King, its chairman, stated, the American people henceforth must get used to the idea that they will never ever again in their lifetime have full employment. What a scandalous thing that our government is fully cooperating with this organization built up by the Royal Institute for International Affairs to destroy the middle class of the United States.
The order is truly a secret society. It was founded in the United States at Yale University in 1833. It has continued and exists down to the present day. Each year, the order takes in 15 men, senior students from Yale University. Never more than 15. Only once has it been less than 15. In 1946, they took in, I think, 10 rather than 15 members. So what we have is a secret society which, over the last 150 years, has accumulated about 2,500 members, of whom perhaps 500 are alive today. Of this 500, perhaps 100 are actively in pursuit of the objectives of the order. It's not another college fraternal society. Yale University is the only university in the United States, or indeed the world, which has senior societies. These are societies where the 15 are selected in the junior year and actually are initiated at the beginning of the senior year. They stay on campus only 1 year as members. They are called knights. When they graduate, they leave the university, they go out into the world, then they're known as patriarchs. So at any one time, you only have 15 knights in existence, and for the rest of their lives, they're known as patriarchs. And they work during their lifetime, or a number do, towards the ends of the order. They are pretty much guaranteed success. Certainly they're guaranteed financial success. And in my reading of the material I have, I infer that so long as they go along with the purposes of the order, so long as they gear their careers and their lives towards certain ends, then they are guaranteed success. Well, up to 6 months ago, I denied that there was a conspiracy, because, frankly, I couldn't prove one. I suspected a conspiracy, but I couldn't prove there was one until 6 months ago. Well, a little before 6 months ago. I received the catalog, which is the membership list of the society, all the way back to 1833. And I received some of their internal documents, enough for me to put together the way they correspond with each other, the operations within the order, to some extent their problems. The order has a temple on the Yale campus.
A temple?
A temple, yes. It's a building maybe this 50, 60 feet by 40 feet, maybe 40 feet high. There's no windows, 2 big steel doors. We know what the temple looks like because back in 1880s, a number of Yale students became a little unhappy about what was going on inside this temple. When they went by it at midnight, sometimes they heard strange noises and all kinds of rumors on the Yale campus as to what this might be. There was a break-in. I call it the Yale Gate. There was a break-in to the temple, and the students who broke in cataloged what they found, and they made a drawing, a design of the interior of the temple. And 3 of the rooms are numbered. One is 322, one is 323, and one is 324. 322 is also, I suspect, the chapter number. 322 is an identification. And also in correspondence between members, they conclude their correspondence, where you and I will conclude yours truly or yours sincerely. They conclude yours in 322.
This is a symbol of death. Now, why would they take a symbol of death?
Yes, from what I understand, when a new member is initiated, that would be in the senior year at Yale, he's placed within a coffin.
Oh, my.
And from the photographs we have of members inside the temple, many of these photographs are the 15 sitting around a table, and they have this skull and the crossbones sitting on the table in front of them. It is the symbol of death, and it has been called the Brotherhood of Death, and I think it probably more adequately should be called the Brotherhood of Death. Look at the history, the biographies of the leading members of the order, and reconstruct their career and see if there's a common pattern in their careers. So, to come back to my point, I have to reconstruct their objectives. What are the objectives? In the words of one member, might is right. If you have the power, you use it to achieve your objectives. What is the objective? As you look at the histories of individual members, it can only be one thing: to acquire power, to keep power, to use power for their own purposes. For example, Averell Harriman is a very influential member of the order. Harriman was initiated in 1913. His club number is D111. All the other 14 of D111 have died off. Averell Harriman is the only one left. To come to the other part of your question, who are some of the significant members? Today, 2 men stand out. One is Averell Harriman, who is the I suppose, the chief financial angel of the Democratic Party. The other is Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush. The Bush family is quite prominent within the order. Now, if you go back in history a little, you'll find that George Bush's father, Prescott Sheldon Bush, was also a member of the order. He was a member of Brown Brothers Harriman, which is the Harriman private banking company. So today you've got two men who are supposedly in politics in opposition, Bush and Harriman, actually the members of the same secret society. And Bush's father was not only a member, he was a partner in the what was then Harriman and Company, which later became Brown Brothers Harriman. So behind the scenes, and this is something you don't see until you investigate it, people who appear to be in opposition politically or financially or industrially or in many ways are working together. The method they use is that of the Hegelian dialectic. Thesis played against antithesis leads to a synthesis. In other words, for Hegel, for history to make progress, you have to have conflict. And when you look at the key people in the order, you will find that they generate conflict. So Bush and Harriman politically are conflicting. Coffin and Buckley, although part of the same order, are in public conflicting with one another because conflict leads to the new synthesis.
We're under the control of what I call the cabal, and this is part of a grander scheme. I'm going to start with the money mafia because it is the most urgent issue in the world today. The problem with the money situation is that there's only about one person in every 100 who really understands it. And there's some, we think of money in some esoteric way of we wishing, of course, we'd had more. But it's a little complex. It's just as a result of a system which has grown up, which is designed to take us to the cleaners. And something can be done about it. Something must be done about it.
Now the explanation begins. And trust me, every piece matters. They all connect. So listen carefully.
So let's try to learn. What is money? Well, most people don't know. It used to be coins, silver, gold, copper, and some iron coins. But of course, we got too busy and too big to be able to do that. If you're going to buy a house, you can't put a bag and pay for it. So we started using paper money. And at first it was backed by some coins or things, and later, of course, it wasn't. But over the years, the system has changed to the point where today, only about 3% of all money is either coins or paper. 97% is virtual, and virtual means computer entry. The first and probably the brightest of the governors of the Bank of Canada said that money was just a book entry. If he were alive today, he'd say money is just a computer entry. Well, the problem is, whose computers? And that's where we have to do something about it.
But whose computers? You've heard it a million times. Follow the money. And coming from a former defense minister, it's worth at least hearing him out.
We, the people, own the patent to create money. We have licensed private individuals to do it for us. And they now create 97% of all the money, but they create all of it as debt. And debt on which interest has to be paid, and no one creates any money with which to pay the interest, so you just keep going further and further and further into debt. The whole system is mathematically absurd. It's more insane than insane, if that's possible.
Before we go further, let's take a step back. This didn't appear overnight. It started somewhere. And to understand where we are, we have to understand where it all began.
I want to just give you a bit of a background on the history of the system is multiplied and what we call bank leverage. If we go back 300 years when the Bank of England was chartered, they lent half of their money or all of their capital, their gold and silver, to the king at 8%. So he gave them a license to print, P-R-I-N-T, an equal amount and lend it to their rich friends at high interest rates. So in effect, they were allowed to lend the same capital twice. But to understand, most people have the myth, observe the myth, that if you go to the bank to borrow money to buy a car, that what they're lending you is somebody deposit that somebody else made the day before or a couple of days before. Not so. They create the money. They're pretty well lent out all the time. So if you go in and say to buy a car for $35,000, and what they'll do is ask you for collateral, and if you have some stocks or bonds, okay, or failing that, you can give them a second mortgage on your house or your cottage, and if you can't do any of those things, you can get co-signature of a rich relative. And once they're satisfied with the collateral, then they'll have you sign a note for $35,000, repayable principal and interest at prime plus, 2 or 3%, depending on the color of your eyes. As soon as they're satisfied, they tap their computer, and $35,000 appears in your account that you can go out and spend. Seconds earlier, that money did not exist. It was created out of thin air. And as a result of that borrowing, we have paid $1,100 billion in interest since 1974, none of it which was necessary, none. Because it is all part of something bigger that's going on in the world, and that is to take away power from the people and give it to multinational corporations and banks who are under the control of what I call the cabal. And this is part of a grander scheme. Now this is being engineered, as I said, by an international cabal. Now what is a cabal? Is a group of people with the banking cartel at the apex, then the oil cartel, and then the international corporations, the transnational corporations, and then the U.S. Intelligence organizations, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and a huge chunk of the American military. And they're all in it together. They control the free energy that we need. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that or not, but the same cabal owns the patents to free energy. And there are several different ways of going about that, but the most likely is what they call zero-point energy. It's the energy that's everywhere in the cosmos. It's unlimited. It could have been there long ago if it hadn't been for the fact that these people who are in control don't want to see any change.
He makes a strong claim about free energy, that we could have had it long ago. Whether you believe it or not, what comes next connects to something that affects every one of us. See what you think.
Well, the cabal is also responsible for the war on... The cabal is also, AKA, military-industrial complex. Dr. Carol Rosin, a friend of mine, worked with Dr. Werner von Braun, who was one of the scientists who came to work in the United States at the end of the war, and who mellowed as he got older, and said the industrial military complex has to have an enemy to justify all of this money they're spending on. So they have to have an enemy, and if they don't have one, they have to manufacture one. After they get through with the, if they ever do, is to stage a mock attack in order to get the people of the United States to accept martial law as the onset of the new.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens?
Something that got a lot of attention this week. Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. You know.
So aliens are real?
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
Well,
he made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information.
Happily, some of us are beginning to talk about that sort of thing, and people are saying, "You're kidding me," and I said, "No, I'm not kidding you. But if it happens, just say, wave at them, and say, we know you're playing games with you, and we're not going to go along with it. We're going to stand up for our rights." There was a time when Americans feared God, and we did too, but in the post-war period, we have worshipped money. Money, power, and greed. And those have been the operative words. And so we think of nothing else. How can you make another buck? We have to change. There's some wonderful things that are going on. There's some wonderful people in the world who are doing wonderful things, and more power to them. But what they need is the same thing 1,000 times over. We have to have a tsunami, as I call it, of changed lives, of people who are willing to put their lives on the line for what they believe and to change the world.
What role in the Middle East again does Israel play in this?
Israel was created as the instrument to bring about the Battle of Armageddon and the fulfillment of prophecy, a war that will be so terrible, where nuclear weapons will be used, so that the American citizens and the other people in the world will get down on their knees and beg for no more war. And what is the answer to that? They're going to be told the only way we can guarantee no more war is if we destroy the sovereignty of nations and we come together as one humanity and government.
Right.
Now I'm telling you, unless the American people wake up and stop it, starting in about 1996, the Battle of Armageddon will become a reality. Read the book of Revelations, whether you believe in the book or not, read it, because the men who are bringing this about are using it as their script. And I get people who still come to me all the time and say, Bill, you're all wrong, it's the Jews. The Jews are subverting the world. Man, it's not the Jews, it's not the Catholics, it's not the blacks. It's these men who belong to the ancient mystery schools, who meet in secret and decide the fate of the world. And they belong to all different races and all different nationalities and all different religions to the public point of view. But in secret, it's a different story. At the highest levels of all countries, they all belong to the same club. And we, the people, sit back and we watch this grand drama, which is being played out for our benefit, not theirs. If it wasn't for us, they wouldn't even have to do any of this. But you see, they just can't come out and destroy all of us because they need slaves. They need people to make their shoes and make their cars and mine the ore. They need worker bees, and that's what we are. George Orwell was just like me. He was a low-level member of British intelligence who was appointed to a position high enough where he saw the same documents that I saw. And he tried to warn the world just like I'm trying to warn the world, only he wasn't willing to take the risk that I'm willing to take. So he wrote it in a book called 1984 and spelled out exactly what's coming as a warning to the people of the world, as a work of fiction. But you notice that that work of fiction really stirred people up because they knew that it wasn't fiction. In their heart of hearts, everyone who's read that book knows that it's coming.
Why is it that you are here today, or how is it that you are here today and you're not, conveniently taken away and put in a padded cell somewhere so that you can't speak of these things?
I can tell you this. I began to reveal information in 1976, and I was physically attacked on 2 occasions. My skull was caved in. That's what all these scars are here. On the second attack, I lost my leg. They visited me in the hospital. They had no intention of killing me. They were delivering a message to me. Shut up. And that was the message that came through loud and clear. And 2 men who identified themselves with identification cards who belonged to the Defense Investigative Service, which is really the Defense Intelligence Agency, asked me if I was going to shut up or they were going to have to do it right. And I told them, I said, you don't have to worry about me. I'm going to be a good little boy for the rest of my life, and yeah, I'm going to shut my mouth. And I did for 16 years, kept silent until I saw this. Either these men are following the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is in the Bible. They're either following it, just like a plan, and bringing the prophecies in there to pass, to manipulate and control those who believe in those prophecies and neutralize them, so to speak. In other words, if this is written in the Bible and God has ordained it, who am I to resist? It must come to pass, so I'm not going to try to stop it.
Okay.
What a perfect way to neutralize the opposition right off the bat. Or there really is a God, and what he said was going to come to pass is coming to pass. And I named this, Behold a Pale Horse, from chapter 13 of the book of Revelations. The 4th horse, the 4th horseman of the apocalypse, is the pale horse. And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat upon him was Death. And hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with the beasts of the earth.
They're following a script. Look at the pattern. Something is lining up.
Everything that's in my book, Behold a Pale Horse, is all, everything in here, all the documents that are in here, everything that's in this book is in the public domain.
Can be substantiated?
Yes, and I intentionally wrote this book, not using anything that wasn't available to the public, to show people that, yes, if I can find this information, so can you. I have tons of stuff that's not available to the public. But as you can see by reading this book, you don't need that stuff, because it's what you need is available to you. Public libraries are overflowing with the proof of what's really going on in the world, but nobody really utilizes it to the extent that they're able to pick this out and put it together. Another thing I've done for people is I've put it together for them so that they can see the overall picture rather than looking at small things and thinking that it's isolated. Nothing is isolated. It's all part of a big puzzle. All the media in this country, radio, television, and print, is all owned by 5 corporations. All of these corporations that own the media are owned and controlled, and members of the Council on Foreign Relations sit on their board of directors. But you can trace that yourself.
Okay.
Remember, if you go down and you trace the ownership of a station or a newspaper, and you get to a corporation, remember that somebody owns that corporation, and it's usually another corporation. But when you trace the interlocking of all these things, when you get to the top, there's 5. And all journalists know that there's some things you don't write about, and you don't talk about, because you'll lose your job. And that's where the control is.
If this was predicted 27 years ago, somebody knew something. Now, this is the title of the book, 2025. Scenarios of U.S. and global society reshaped, there's that re again, by science and technology. You know what's so fascinating about this? It was published 27 years ago in the year 1997, and it was funded, well funded, by a Washington, D.C. think tank and 3-letter government agencies. But here's the thing, 1997, 27 years ago, and they write a book about a 502-page book about what the world's going to be. Okay, you ready for the list? Fast mutating viral disease pandemics, genetically developed vaccines, smart IDs, 1997, and this is, you can do the word search and research yourself. They predicted, not 2025, but by 2020, that people would be working from home virtually. Come on, listen, that's World War III, of course. Nuclear devices causing widespread contamination. Nanotech devices, this stuff was never even heard of. Digital currency. Vaccination programs run by organizations like the World Health Organization for a global killer that has yet to emerge.
I want to now share with you some of the insights that these guys had way back in the mid-90s. Again, this is a well-connected think tank in D.C. They are funded and engaged with the wealthy corporations, the ruling class, the National Security Agency. And in 1997, they published this book, creatively titled 2025. And check this out. In the acknowledgments we read, our first thank you is to the sponsors, the people, and the organizations who made possible the original Project 2025 from which this book was created. What did they call it? It was called Project 2025. This book was published in 1997. 10 things to expect if this Project 2025 from the mid-90s turns out to be correct about the remaining items that have not yet transpired. And before I list them, I want to remind us, these are not just, throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. I mean, it's like 90% track record here. And they may not be right about all these either. But here we go.
Now brace yourselves, because if what you're about to hear ever becomes reality, things could get very ugly. Let's hope they got this part wrong. But listen to this.
They said we will have World War III, a nuclear device causing widespread contamination, additional epidemics, cyber attacks, or in their world, computer-based socially significant crime, such as tampering with air traffic control or national security systems, a global currency, mass starvation. Now that, in and of itself, that's pretty heavy that we just considered. But given, again, the track record and how the things that they're announcing here, you also hear announced by the likes of Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and Jesuit Tide. We're going to see some pretty interesting stuff as we go forward, but we're just on Project 2025 from the 90s right now. Let's look first at the mass starvation. I was mentioning Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, WEF. He stated, we're going to have an angrier world. In the context of food and energy scarcity, we are going to have an angrier world. Those are his words. And so when he talks about an angrier world, and in the same interview, Klaus says that this angrier world will be because of economic conditions, and that's why I see the need for a great reset. In fact, roll that clip right now, please.
We have to prepare for a more angry world, and I see the need for action. I see the need for a great reset.
There is a Obama-produced film, a movie, that came out called Leave the World Behind. Why did the Obamas get behind this film? The film, I won't be able to tell you that, but I can tell you what the film is about. It's about an apocalyptic scenario after the grid fails and there's a grid down crisis because of cyber attacks. And this comes out, again, right before 2025. And then you go back to 2014 with the release of a video game, which also has scripts like movies do. And this Black Ops 2, major prominent video game, the script writers for it were consulting with that the Wall Street Journal calls the premier futurist in the national security space. So the top Pentagon futurist was consulted for the script on this video game. And what is the script for the video game? Well, the object of the game is to prevent a cyber attack in the context of a new Cold War with China. And guess what year this video game is set? And again, this came out in 2014, and the video game is set in 2025. So we're starting to see kind of a pattern here, are we not? We look at World War III, and we look at their predictions that a nuclear device causing widespread contamination will take place. This might sound outlandish, but keep in mind that since 1945, with the invention using of the first atomic bomb, there have been, in Cold War history, 16 near-miss nuclear events. And historians and national security experts estimate that about 1%, you have about a 1% chance in any given year of having a nuclear exchange. A 1% chance, then over a 100-year period of time, you'd expect it once. If you get halfway through that, you feel like, we're living on borrowed time. Well, we're like 80% of the way through a 100-year period of time since 1945. So it's hard to expect the unexpected. It's hard to foresee that which our normalcy bias doesn't allow us to see as potentials. We lose imagination because we see only the thing immediately in front of us. But this is something that the Project 2025 futurists are saying to expect. And again, we see war, epidemics, starvation. Let's do it in the proper order from the Bible again. War, starvation, epidemics. Those are 3 of the 6 that are up there from that pale horse. Now, the last 4 predictions that they make here, we got 10 things to expect if they're correct. Universal monitoring of business transactions. Smart ID cards. Now, watch this. This gets even more interesting. Smart ID cards, including your religious and or organizational affiliations and perhaps with your genomic data. I had to take a picture of that segment out of the book, put it on the screen so you can read it for yourself. Identification cards will be universal. Smart cards will contain information such as nationality, medical history, perhaps even key data from one's genome, education and employment records, financial accounts, social security, credit status, and even religious and organizational affiliations. The 9th one kind of sounds innocuous and not that big of a deal. It's just Social Security will be based on need only. The technical term for that is means testing for transfer payments or other forms of welfare. Means testing meaning only those who need it will get it, and they're making a prediction that will be the case with Social Security. Some people might be a little have their feathers ruffled by that notion, but I'm not meaning to get into the economic political debates about that. I want to bring this out because if they will means test it, then they will also be willing to take the next step, and that is ideological testing. Happened with the truckers in Canada. Bank accounts frozen, the targeted group, anybody who is the other, who is the demonized group of the day, can have now the precedent has been set in the West to be debanked, to have payment processors taken, to be prohibited from platforms that are kind of in that woke ideology at the moment. And so the fact that they're saying, well, you're not going to get your check unless you need it, that can step right next to the next stop on that journey toward tyranny. You're not going to get your food, you're not going to be provided for in a context of scarcity and famine. This kind of leads right into another one while we're on number 9 about the Deagle Corporation. This was a major intelligence outfit that they were cited by and utilized by Stratfor, which is probably the biggest global intelligence corporation there is. And Stratfor cites Deagle. So they're a major player in intelligence developing and publishing. And they made a prediction that by 2025, there would be a reduction, look in the red, of population in America from 327 million to 100 million. And GDP would drop from 60,000 per person to 24,000 per person. Now, this is not to say that this will happen, but that's quite an alarming prediction to make. Why would you go out and say that? Well, it's in the context of here, what we were talking about, a mass starvation and global currency. and major war and epidemics and cyber attacks. This is where you see massive population reductions and economic collapse. But I love their little disclaimer here. They first, this isn't the disclaimer, that'll be on the next slide, but first they say this: the collapse of the Western financial system will wipe out the standard of living of its population while ending Ponzi schemes such as the stock exchange and the pension funds. Take into account that the forecast that they've made here is nothing more than a model, whether flawed or correct. Okay, here's their disclaimer. It's not God's word. This is not God's word. This is not a magical device that allows us to see the future. Now, if you're planning the future and announcing what you're going to do ahead of time, then that's not a prediction. But these guys are just making predictions, and they're saying, you know what, this is flawed. This could not transpire as badly as we're seeing it, which makes me feel happy about that situation, about a population reduction of that magnitude and economic collapse. But whether it's going to happen or not isn't even so much the question as when.
But whether it's going to happen or not isn't even so much the question as when.
Donald Trump said over and over again, I got nothing to do with it. He said, I don't agree with it at various times. And every single week, Angela was out there, you were out there, I was out there, telling you the connections between the people who wrote the chapters and Donald Trump and videos of what they said. How do you fight this? He lied about his connection to it, and yet everything that was written in these books is coming to pass.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the exception of shows like yours, this was one of the biggest media screw-ups I've seen in politics in my lifetime, that just simply because he denied the connection, they turned it into a both sides thing, and that really watered down people believing. And the book you see behind me, that I wrote that in desperation for people to actually read, not just read the plan, which no one does, but actually think about what it meant to, you know, schools and vaccines, or a vengeful DOJ. And I was trying to say to people, okay, don't read 1,000 pages, but imagine if the things that Donald Trump was promising and the heritage people were promising were to happen, and it's played out exactly as you were saying, as I tried to write. And I do think it's a real cautionary tale, the media allowing someone just denying it, gutting to a both sides, which you didn't do. You made the connections, you connected the dots, and I wish a lot more people had done exactly that.
Angelo, part of it is that one didn't need a lot of imagination to cover this, right? It's not a fun read, it's not an easy read, but they actually said the things that they're going to do. It wasn't hidden in deep abstraction. They said what they were going to do, and now they're doing it.
Yeah, and I think the other part, in terms of even just the coverage and people believing it, is that, you know, the more people learned about it, it was wildly unpopular. No one really liked the aspects or parts of project. I mean, it was universally unpopular. And I think that also fed into the ideas. People said, well, I mean, everybody puts together a wish list ahead of elections, but no, they couldn't possibly implement these things. And then I think to take a step back, the other part that was so hard about it is that in totality, you know, when you get beyond the individual examples that you cited, and there are so many others, but in totality, it was essentially a plan, not just to change government and implement policies, but reshape American society. And that just felt fantastic. You know, oh, come on, that's just a fantasy. Of course that's what they're saying, but they're not going to actually try to reshape American society through all of these changes. And I think that made it really hard for people to fully internalize the fact that a vote for Trump and putting Trump in office was actually a vote for putting Project 2025 into effect and all the consequences that come out from there.
Putting Trump in office was actually a vote for putting Project 2025 into effect and all the consequences that come out from there.
Ask Donald Trump what his plan is for Black America. Ask him. I'll tell you what it is. Look at Project 2025. Project 2025 tells you the plan includes making police departments have stop and frisk policies. The plan includes making it more difficult for workers to receive overtime pay. The plan includes ending the ability of Medicare to negotiate drug prices. You know what we have done? He said he would, we did, which means that's how we brought down the cost of prescription medication. His plan includes making it more difficult for working people to get by and to destroy our democracy. You know what he says he'll do? Terminate the Constitution of the United States.
That's right.
Let me remind folks, you know what's in the Constitution of the United States? The Fourth Amendment, which protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. The Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and he's going to terminate the Constitution of the United States, which in most of those amendments, one thing or another was about a movement spurred by black people to ensure that we would be equally protected under the law? Come on.
Or another was about a movement spurred by black people to ensure that we would be equally protected under the law? Come on.